Okay, welcome to the Heritage Home Program's Researching Your Home presentation. I'm Jamie Miles. I'm the Preservation Programs Assistant at the Cleveland Restoration Society. And here we also have Jessica Beam, who is a Heritage Home Program Associate, as well as Abigail Enoch, who is also a Heritage Home Program Associate. And today we're going to be talking a little bit about how to research home. So let's get started. Oh my God, how do I? Hold on a second. All right, we're going to be talking a little bit about how to research your home. And so let's get started. So you may be asking, why should I be interested in researching the history of my house? So just a few reasons. Researching the history of your house can help with decision making when you're rehabbing or remodeling your home. It can help you foster appreciation of your environment and your surroundings. It can help you feel more connected to your neighborhood and community. It makes for great storytelling, once you know the story of your house and your neighborhood. It can help you, if you're just curious, if you've always wondered, who used to own your house or how it was constructed, it can help you satisfy that curiosity. And also it's just generally fun and you get to feel like a detective a little bit. You also might be asking, what sort of information might I find if I start, on this research journey? So there are a few different pieces of information that you might be able to find by doing some research. And that's, when was my house built? Who was the original owner? Who has lived in my house over time, establishing that chain of ownership? And was my property farmland at one point, and whose farm was it? Was another building here before my house was built? Who was the builder and the architect of my house, if there was an architect? And was my house part of a larger development project, on your whole street or in a subdivision? What architectural style is my house and why might it be that architectural style? And what characteristics of my house are original and what was added later? And what did my neighborhood look like in the past, and how has it changed over time? Those are all different questions you might be able to seek out when you're researching. So in getting started on this kind of journey, as I'm calling it, there are kind of a few things that you're going to want to have organized before you really get going. The first is having obviously the property address on hand, and then also the PPN, which is the permanent parcel number. If you don't know your property's PPN, you can look at your property tax documents or online at your county's GIS, which is the Geographic Information System, and I'll get into that a little bit in just a moment. You're also going to want to have a library card, both the Cleveland Public Library and the Cuyahoga County Public Library card if you're in Cleveland or in the Cleveland area. And if you're outside the Cleveland area, whatever your local library system is, be sure to have a library card as you get started. You're also going to want to organize information as you gather it. So keep in mind that you're going to be collecting a lot of different pieces of information from a lot of different sources. So you're going to want to keep a folder either digitally or a hard copy if you are the type of person who likes things on paper, and put everything in there. Make sure you take screenshots or print things as you find them, and don't assume that you will remember something because like I said, you're going to be collecting a lot of different information. So it's just best to have that kept so that you don't forget it. Remember that there is no single correct research path, and each unique project will likely require a different process. So with this presentation, we're just going to kind of be providing you with a lot of different resources. Maybe a few good ways to get started, but the information you find is pretty much going to end up dictating the path that you take, and it's going to be unique to you. So keep that in mind. And research is all about using all the resources available to you to assemble bits of information into a complete story like a puzzle. So like I said, we'll be using all this information, just kind of assemble your home story. So kind of a really good starting place is to use your county's geographic information system, the GIS, as I mentioned before. Cuyahoga County's version of this is called MyPlace. And it contains a lot of pieces of information that are public records. So you can find your property's PPN, the permanent parcel number. You can find its current ownership, the parcel lines, tax information, and more. And on the system, the properties are easily searchable by address, owner, or the PPN. So if you have any of those three different pieces of information, you can find the property that you're looking for. And other counties have their own versions of this as well. So, you know, Summit, Lorain, Cuyahoga, they all have GIS systems that you can find this information on. So this is what Cuyahoga County's looks like. Like I said, it's called MyPlace. Here you can see it kind of looks like a big map, and as you zoom in, you'll be able to see parcels closer up, but you can search. They're visible at the top bar by owner, parcel, or address. And then also you can narrow your search to keep it to the entire county, or you can narrow it down to a specific city if you know what you're looking for. And then I'll also add that in the bottom right corner there, it has a button that says go to full map. That leads you to another version of the system that is contains a lot more detailed information as well. But for the time being, we'll just keep it to the basic version here that you'll find the majority of information that you'll need from this. So here's an example where I searched for the Cleveland Restoration Society's headquarters on Prospect Avenue in the Midtown neighborhood of Cleveland. And here you can see it pops up with a little box, and it shows that permanent parcel number there that I've circled. And then if you go to the sidebar there, it contains a bunch of different tabs that you can look different pieces of information. If you go to building information, again, it has that little preview with the permanent parcel number, and then also a few other interesting pieces of information. It has just some basic characteristics about the property and the building, and then also what the county thinks that the build date might be on there as well. So that can be a good place to start for you. And then here are some more examples of GIS in other counties as well, like Summit County, Lorain, and Lake. And there, you know, most counties in Ohio have systems like this, and they're all the same basic idea. You can search for the same types of information. So it's just something to keep in mind. Excuse me. Now, when you're performing, when you go through once you establish this beginning information, you can then start performing a deed search and creating a chain of ownership for your property. And you can trace ownership of your property backwards through time, starting with yourself or the current property owner. And then as you go back through time, this can help you find the original owner of your house or its build date. And so if you live in Cuyahoga County or are looking at a property in Cuyahoga County, you can do this through the fiscal officer's website. I know other counties may have different ways of finding this information, but for example, I know Summit County, you can also do this search through the fiscal officer's website. But keep in mind, this takes time, patience, and digging. And a really helpful way to do this is to create a timeline of transfers as you go, starting with yourself and moving back in time. So just as I lead you through an example here, we see the Cuyahoga County Fiscal Officer's website. You would click on, go to the recorded documents section, and then you can click on general deed search, and that'll take you where you need to go. And so just a few tips here as you search for deeds. You may have to search multiple times with different terms or parameters. Sometimes names can be misspelled in the system, so you might want to try a few different spellings of things if you're looking for something and you can't find it. It is better to overestimate your date window than to underestimate, but however, not being specific enough can give you too many results. So in this example here, I'm looking for the transfer of the Cleveland Restoration Society's headquarters in the 1970s when we were first established. So I know that it was in the 70s, so I put into the recording date January 1st, 1970, and I'm looking for some time that the building was transferred between 70 and 2000. So I put that date parameter in, and then I searched for company name Cleveland Restoration. And then you can see here on one of my pages there, I found 34 results only. And I found that in 1997, the Cleveland Restoration Society's headquarters was deeded from Maxine Levin, who is our founder. And I know that it's a deed because it says, and under document type, it says deed. And then you would then go ahead and click on the number there to the side, and that'll take you to the actual document. You click on there on the top, view image, and it'll download a file for you. And you can then see the deed, the official document that shows the transfer of that property during that year. So I would then, if I were to continue looking for the transfer of the property from somebody else to Maxine Levin back in time, I would go and continue this process until I found the original owner of the house. If you're stuck on your deed search, as I mentioned, don't despair. There are definitely other ways to find information on property ownership and build date. This is just a really thorough way to complete this kind of research. So if you're a little bit confused by it, don't worry. There are definitely other ways to find that information. And so now we're going to have Jessica talk a little bit about the Cuyahoga County Archives and what information you can find from them.
Thanks, Jamie. So the Cuyahoga County Archives, or whatever county you're in, archives can be a great way to search for information about your home or your property. For Cuyahoga County, it is located in the county building at Perkins and East 40th, which is a few blocks away from our offices in Midtown. And right now, the county archives are closed to the public, but there are still staff there that are very responsive to emails and can scan and send you materials. And so you can reach out to them to find what you're looking for. For other counties that might not have a specific county archives, a lot of the county information can be held by either the city or the public library system. And so you can reach out to a librarian or an archivist that works for the library to be able to figure out exactly where you need to find the information. Records that you might be able to find for the county archives are building cards or tax appraisals, which sometimes include photographs from the 40s to the 60s, plat maps from the mid-1800s to the 1940s, and also tax duplicates. And so there's a lot of information you can find about your property or whatever property you're researching from archives that a county would hold. So the building cards or the real estate appraisal records are a really interesting resource that you might be able to find. For Cuyahoga County, they're held at the county archives. But that information was gathered during appraisals through the 40s through the 60s. And it can show you, if you're lucky, it'll have a picture of the home. Not every single one does. But it can tell you information about when the home was purchased, who lived in the home, when changes were made to it, the materials that the home, like for the exterior walls or trim. There may even be a sketch or a drawing or any additional notes that the appraiser would have written for that. For this particular property, you've got John Schneider, who owned this particular property on Pearl in Strongsville. And so you can get a lot of information about when the appraiser is kind of taking these notes for when changes were made and the value for the land at the times that they're looking at it. Tax maps are really helpful. A lot of counties have this. Some have this connected to the GIS system that they have, and so you'd be able to see the historic tax maps. Otherwise, they're kept at archives or libraries. And it's a way to see the transfer of ownership for a property and what the surrounding parcels look like, how time has changed, if it was once a farm and then subdivided and developed, who lived in those areas, and then what the neighborhood looked like. What they would do is, for the transfer ownership, cross out the previous owner and then put the new owner. And so in the example pictured in the top left, you have the current owner at the time that the tax maps were done, which was John Schneider in 1945. And then before that, you have Mrs. Bulkley in 45 who had that, and then her husband, Mr. Bulkley, had it in 21, and so they just cross out the name and write the new owner either above or next to or below. And so you can get an idea of when those times changed, and that can even help with an add-on to a deed search if you're doing a deed search at the same time. And so a lot of these different tactics can all either give you an insight into something you might be stuck on or give you more information. Tax duplicates are a record of the real estate assessment on which the property taxes are based. And so for a home that may have additions, or if you're not sure when outbuildings or even your building was built, it can show if the value of the property has jumped. And when it jumps, that's usually an improvement or a new building. And so it can give you an idea of, if your home it was once a very small home and then it's got like addition upon addition upon addition. The tax duplicates are a great way to see kind of when that might have been built or added onto the home. And it also allows you to accurately narrow down a build date. And so the county archives might fires or floods. A lot of counties lost archives. And so it's a lot of guessing to see when the home was built. Maybe the county says it was 1850, but from like the original deed or from the research you've done that the home was actually built in the 1830s. And so with the tax duplicates and that research, you can get an accurate idea of when a building was on that property and was first built. Now, using historic maps or cartography is a really great way of also kind of learning about your neighborhood and your property. Cleveland Historic Maps is a resource online that's maintained by CSU, and it shows historic maps and aerial photographs of Cuyahoga County, mostly around Cleveland, so it's not the entire county, but it's whatever maps they have available, kind of spliced together, from various dates from 1852 to 1979. And so for this, it's a really great way to track property changes because the maps are layered. And so you can say, okay, I'm looking at my street in 1852 and it's all farmland. And then maybe you want to look at the 1920s map and then the 1979 aerial photographs to see how that area has changed, or to track what your home is, who owned the home, because the maps all have different information on them. When you're looking at county archives, maybe not through Cleveland, or you don't have that online resource for Cleveland Historic Maps, which is just for Cleveland, you might be able to get a good idea of those properties from the county records. The Sanborn fire insurance maps are really helpful for searching for your home. For Cuyahoga County and some of the surrounding areas, they're available online through the Cleveland Public Library. There's also a map room at the Cleveland Public Library. But the Sanborn fire insurance maps are across the country. They were done, and it can show you not only the address of the home, but in some cases the building materials, how many stories the home had. And so if there was an addition that raised the home up a little bit, you might be able to see, is that indicated on the Sanborn fire insurance maps? And some homes changed addresses, like the street numbers changed or the street names changed, and you'd be able to see that on the fire insurance maps for what your home's address might have been at one time, if it has changed. Now, if you're trying to find the builder and architect information, you might be lucky, and the local building department or library might have the original building permit in their archives. If your home is part of a subdivision, the same builder might have done all or part of the entire street. And so if you're looking around and you know that your home was built in the 40s and so is every other house in the street and they all look very similar, it's highly likely that they were all done by the same builder or development company. And so you might be able to find developer information on a plat map when you're looking at that, which could lead you to the name of the builder. Now pictured here is a building permit from the city of Cleveland Heights. Cleveland Heights actually has a lot of the original building permits for their homes. And so this particular one is from 1914, and it is for an owner who was J.L. Severance, and the architect was Charles Schweinfurth. And so you can see when the Severance estate was first had their permit pulled for their estate off of Mayfield, which is now the Severance Mall. There's other ways to search for developer or builder or architect information. Some of those are old publications that you can search through that are available through Cleveland Public Libraries, but also other library systems might have access to these. And that could be Ohio Architect and Builder, the Cleveland Leader, or Plain Dealer Historical. And those can show you not only information about builders, but also if you're in a subdivision, there might be ads for people, for the developer putting ads out for moving into that neighborhood. And so you might be able to find more information about how it was promoted in the newspapers and things like that. There's also a Cleveland Architects database that is through Cleveland Landmarks, but the city planning website is currently under construction, and so the database isn't online right now. But you can email Cleveland Landmarks if you're interested for information, and that just lists architects that work throughout Cleveland. The database is really interesting because it does include the address for the property, sometimes a picture, information if the building is still standing or not. And that way, if you do know your architect or an architect who is working in your area, you'd be able to see other buildings and see maybe how they're similar or different to yours. If you are really lucky, you might be able to find original blueprints for your home. It's usually very rare, but sometimes you can contact previous owners to see if they had a copy of the original blueprints. Ask neighbors, maybe they have, if you have a very close community. If you're lucky and you have if you have a kit home, there were a lot of companies that sold homes in kits. So you've got like Aladdin and Sears and some other companies where you could purchase an entire home from a magazine or from a newspaper ad. And if you have a kit house, a lot of those ads are still online. The catalogs are digitized and available online. And so you'd be able to search and find, how your home was promoted, what the floor plans options were, what it was expected to look like, drawings of it. And so that's kind of a good way if you have a kit house. If you're not sure if you have a kit house, one big tell is if you're in the attic or the basement and you can see the original beams for the home, if they are stamped with numbers, usually that means it's part of a kit. And so I'll pass it on to Abigail, talk a little bit about other resources that are available.
Perfect. Thanks, Jessica. Yeah, so if you have kind of gone down those avenues and you're looking for maybe another option to do some research, your historical societies are a really great place to go. So the bigger ones in the area, like Western Reserve Historical Society and the Cleveland History Center, they're a lot bigger, so they have a lot of digitized materials, and then a lot of their collections are available to browse online. So maybe you can look before you make an appointment to see, what might be there that would be helpful for your research. I know that, the Cleveland History Center is a lot of like Cleveland and Cuyahoga County, but Western Reserve has a lot of information about just Northeast Ohio in general. So even if you're outside Cuyahoga County, you should still be able to find some information there as well. You can also look at your local historical societies. They're usually not as big, and so they may not have as much digitized material that's available online. But because they're usually a little bit smaller, the people who work there, they know their collection really well, and so they should be able to point you in a really good direction. And then, it's very local, so they know a lot of that local history in a way that maybe a bigger area might not as well. So kind of use your local resources really well. You can also look at historic photographs if you're interested in seeing more of a visual representation of maybe your local, your city or your neighborhood, and trying to find more information that way. So Cleveland Public Library has a photograph collection that is online. Some of it's not digitized, so you might have to look for it in person. A lot of cities or counties also have a memory project. So Cleveland Memory, Ohio Memory. I know Summit has summitmemory.org, where you can look at old photos of your area. These examples here are actually all Cleveland Heights. And so you may be able to find another avenue for research, seeing something visually that can kind of lead you in another direction where you can find out some more information. Another really great option is using social media. So kind of crowdsourcing your information from locals and people who may have some information that some of the other libraries or archives don't, because it's kind of like family photographs or family, history. So a lot of either neighborhoods and cities or, little local groups have their own Facebook page where you can kind of ask questions on there, say, I'm researching my home. It's in this neighborhood. Does anyone have any maps about this neighborhood or pictures from this time period or know anything about, this homeowner who used to live here or this property owner? And then there's other Facebook groups that are kind of devoted specifically towards like architecture or to history and different things like that. So you can kind of pose your questions across a couple of different groups and kind of try and see what information comes up. If you do, so if you kind of research a lot about your home and you find a lot of people like property owners or builders or architects, and you're interested in learning more about those people in general, there's a lot of other ways that you can look for more information about them. So different directories that are available, at your library, at the archives, that show, either biographies or a little bit more information about the homeowners or the architects or the builders. The Cleveland Blue Book was published in the early 20th century. And so that had information and like mini bios about moderately wealthy to wealthy businessmen in the area. So you can kind of look through that if you're, past property owners were someone who was maybe a business owner in the area, and you can find out more information about them that way. You can also look through old newspapers, like Plain Dealer Historical offered through the public library. And a lot of these digitized newspapers, if you search for them online, because they're digitized, they have a search option. So you can, search either by last name or first and last name if the last name's a little bit common, and just try and find more information that way, which will bring up either, ads about maybe a builder, or ads about the architect, or a newspaper article about a new neighborhood that's being developed that includes, your home in there, and kind of bring you down a couple of different avenues just by searching keywords that kind of come up in your search. You can also look, many of the public libraries have a genealogy resource, and those kind of change depending on which library you're using, but they usually have a full list on their website, since genealogy is such a interesting, facet that a lot of people are interested in. Ancestry.com is usually paid through many libraries, and so you can kind of use Ancestry to research past owners or builders, architects, anything like that comes up in your search. Findagrave.com is really interesting. So whenever you find a record, it can actually be linked to other family members. So you can kind of maybe do a property search that way if it was passed down through a family. You can search by cemetery or by cemetery site. And then all the records are able to be publicly edited. And so similar to like Facebook or crowdsourcing, users can add information onto that record individually. And so you can kind of gather information that way as well. And then finally, Google is another good option. So obviously use a little bit of discretion, but if you go to Google Books, you can search Control F for a last name or for your street name, or, just any keywords in your search, similar if you were looking on a newspaper, like searching through the newspaper. And so you can Control F through Google Books and then maybe find some digitized books and information in there as well. And then now I'm going to pass it on to Jessica, who's going to talk a little bit about looking at your home's architecture and style.
Thanks. So if you know the date that your home was built, you can determine its architectural style or vice versa. And so if you have a home that has a very distinct style and character, you might be able to look into when homes like that were built and find out when your home was built. And so that might give you another idea of who the builder was, what they like to focus on, and kind of more information about what your home looks like. A Field Guide to American Houses by Virginia Savage McAllister is a really great resource. That is like the Bible of historic preservation for America. And that's what you can actually look for. It's really easy to use. Some libraries have copies of it, and so you're able to look through it. It's a very big book though. But it has pictorial keys and easy to digest ways to identify your home style based on its characteristics. And so they have an index in the beginning that shows the different elements that your home has. If it has a distinctive roof or windows or chimney or even, any kind of thing on the home, you'd be able to narrow that down and say, okay, my home has a roof line like this, or my home has a roof like this, like slate or copper, if it's a metal roof, any little details, and narrow it down to certain architectural styles. And that way you can kind of get an idea of, okay, do you have a home that was part of very common building phrase that, you know, went for decades, or is it something that's more of a less common style that was a bit of a fad, or something that was only common for a very short period of time? And so you can really do a lot of digging to learn about the architectural style of your home by using resources. Now the book can be available through the libraries, as I mentioned, but you can also find information about different style of houses online if you're searching. And there are other books that also have, you know, architectural style guides as well. You can also kind of get an idea of what your home style was, or even the history of your community, by using physical clues. So in our case, for our building on Prospect, the Sarah Benedict House, if you look at the home, it's a single family residence built in the late 1800s at a time when Prospect was very prosperous and a lot of single family homes. But there's also from that same general time period, within about 20 years or so, apartment buildings or apartment homes, and also row houses on the street. And so that was when Prospect was really being developed. It was a residential street, but it also has buildings that are storefronts that showcase the changes that America went through when it became an automobile city and cars were everywhere. And so you've got storefronts, and then you've got parking lots, which is a whole other different era of Cleveland history. And so you can really follow not only like the history of your home, but your neighborhood, just walking around and seeing the different changes and styles as buildings were torn down and new ones were built. Now, when you're searching for information about your home, not everything is going to be perfect or exact. If you're very lucky, maybe your home is a very distinctive style that is easy to identify. But in some cases, it's not. Homeowners built whatever homes they wanted and whatever, picked their fancy. And so you might have a home that is completely different than every other home on the street that stands out as this very unique structure, which is great. And that way you have a little bit more of a detective work to find out, who is that builder? Why did they choose the decisions they made for their home? Why does it stand out so much? And yeah, it's the joy of kind of researching about your home, is you never know what you're going to find. And when you do find something, share it. Share your home's history with your friends, family, neighbors. It can help inspire others to get interested in the history of their community, and then also help people feel more connected to their history and their community, and have that sense of place where you're connected to people that used to live and work in your area. And that can help people feel more motivated to make your neighborhood, your community, a better place. Now, the Heritage Home Program, we like to give a little bit of a plug for our program. We work in Cuyahoga County and some of the surrounding counties. We have free technical assistance for qualifying homes, which are homes over 50 years old. It's impartial advice with a preservation approach to maintenance, repair, home improvement projects. We have site visits where one of our construction specialists can review any and all issues in your home, can help with project prioritization, contractor resources, and we also have restoration guidance. Another thing that the Heritage Home Program offers is a low interest rate loan for qualifying homes. Fixed rate financing is low as 1.4% depending on where you're located. And that can be used for interior and exterior projects and DIY projects. And we review any exterior projects or changes that you're going to be making, because it's historic preservation. We want to make sure that you're still staying with that character of the home. Now, thank you for listening to our presentation. If you have any questions, please contact us, the Heritage Home Program, with our number or email, and we'll be happy to either answer any questions that you have or direct you to whatever resources we can find to help you with your researching journey.